Well, in 2021, he was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, but Elon Musk has suddenly, somehow, turned supervillain. It seems to be slightly related to his purchase of Twitter and the threat that he seems to pose to a number of people who feel as though they're better distributors of correct information. This interview is a recent one with him and the BBC, where we look at a couple of controversial issues which Elon Musk is apparently not handling up to the standard of a major news organisation. Let's have a look.
Free speech is meaningless unless you allow people you don't like to say things you don't like.
You can see the journalist sitting there going, I don't really like that, I don't really like you, but it's too early to butt in, I can't really say too much just yet, I'll let you finish this point, but it's doing my head in.
I think the issue some people have is that a lot of people were brought back. Some people were brought back who were previously banned for spreading things like QAnon conspiracies. You have people like Andrew Tate who were brought back, who were previously banned for things like hate speech. Do you think you prioritize freedom of speech over misinformation and hate speech?
When you watch an interview like this with an understanding that mainstream media, for as long as we can remember, has had a pretty tight grip on the narratives, the stories, and what's allowed to be expressed, you can understand that from this guy's perspective, a guy like Elon Musk presents a little bit of a threat. Because if there is some form of narrative, and I'm not saying there is, that is being distributed through mainstream media outlets, then a guy like Elon Musk, who holds not only money and power and prestige, but a passion for free speech and a passion for truth, does present a threat. Because all of a sudden, if other opinions are getting out and people are feeling more comfortable to share a particular theme, then not only is the narrative of mainstream media being challenged, but the confidence of people who might disagree with what they feel pressured to say starts to increase, which as a result can increase tension, make people feel a little bit more confident to speak out against these mainstream narratives.
Well, who's to say that something is misinformation? Who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC?
You're literally asking me?
Yes.
Well, no, you are the arbiter on Twitter, because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying, who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? The point at which you say that there is this is misinformation, like who is going to decide that?
You accept that misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause real-world harms, that it can potentially cause...
Yes, and the point I'm trying to make is that the BBC itself has, at times, published things that are false.
This is a challenging point to an organisation like the BBC, because in so many people's eyes for so long, they have been the distributor of truth. They come with an element of authority. They're dressed professionally. BBC has been around for almost 100 years, I'm pretty sure. But the very challenge that Elon poses to this guy suggests, well, hang on a second, you're questioning me with a sense of arrogance about some of the mistakes or some of the misinformation that you've quoted that is on Twitter, but you yourself have suffered this same problem. It's interesting as well, even when we do try and distribute the balance of fact-checking to qualified fact-checkers, we soon realize that even the fact-checkers who serve as the arbiters for what's true and what's false don't always get it right. There's a number of things that you can look back on Twitter from the last couple of years to say, a couple of years ago that got me banned because it was deemed as untrue, misinformation, conspiracy theory. How come that's now come out as the truth? So the idea that there is one group of people who are the qualified experts when it comes to the distribution of truth is a very unstable one. Even in the attempts that we've seen to do it from different sides of politics, it seems as though that's a shaky foundation to base our feet on. So while we can put something on a tweet to say that it's misinformation or false information, or we can kick someone off a platform for it, we've got to make sure that those rules are adaptable so that if it turns out that the information that was being shared is in fact true, it doesn't cost the people who have been banned their livelihood, or at very least their social presence on the platform.
Do you agree that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true.
Right.
In its, whatever it is, 100-year history, I'm quite sure.
Yes.
One of my favourite parts of this interview is just watching how relevant the questions that the journalists are asking Elon of Twitter are to BBC. And you'll start to notice throughout the whole conversation that as soon as the thing gets flipped back on the BBC and the fact that they're making some of the same mistakes or having at least some of the same challenges that Elon refers to at Twitter, the conversation moves on very quickly, because this is not a conversation about the BBC and what we're doing wrong. This is a conversation about Twitter and what you're doing wrong. And we've been around for 100 years, so you shut your stupid rich mouth and all this freedom bullshit.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
what hate
you want
speech are
to
you
address?
talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
But just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you
But
see more
personally,
hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
I absolutely love this, because one of the best ways to win an argument with so many people is forget about logic. Let's just be emotional. Look, I've seen some forms of some kinds of hate speech sometimes on my platform that I go on from time to time, but I'm not here to speak for the rest of Twitter. So, I mean, that's just me. That's just what I've got. And often with a lot of people, you're going to get through that with an argument like that because, I mean, hey, if you've seen it, how can we argue with it? Unless, of course, the person that you're interviewing or talking to wants specific examples of what it is that you're referring to that you're classing as hate speech. You better have some good ones.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples.
Yeah, oh, fuck off. I don't really have anything.
Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
Well, then how did you see that hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
You can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
I say so that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet.
It just goes round and round in circles, doesn't it? And it doesn't take long to realise this guy, he's in a little bit of trouble because what he's doing is doing what a lot of people who don't want to have a genuine conversation do and just rely heavily on emotion. But the antidote to emotion, a lot of the time, is just some logical information. And Elon, the harder he looks for the logic, the more it exposes this guy's narrative. So it seems to simply come at him with the idea that things are worse since he took over.
That's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time.
Looky, let's just move on from here because the truth, if you got me trapped in a corner, I'm a BBC journalist. Don't you know that this is not an interview about me? This is an interview about you. How did this become about me and my personal feed? All I'm here to do is tell you that my feed's become more sexist and more racist, and I don't know exactly how.
You changed the COVID misinformation.
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
Very interesting question that Elon raises just here. And I love the fact that this guy has come to him with the authority of being the BBC and expecting to be able to just sit there and ask the questions. And I mean, credit to this poor journalist. He probably didn't realize how much work he needed to put in to be able to back up some of the problems that he's claiming Elon has with Twitter to BBC. And this is where it starts to get exposed. Now, I'm not saying anything at all. I'm simply asking you as a viewer, have you taken time to view what the BBC has said about COVID and the information that they've shared over the last couple of years? What have they said over the last couple of years about vaccines? What have they said over the last couple of years about masking? Have they changed anything? If they haven't, is everything that they've said true? That's a challenging question, and one which all you have to do is have a little bit of a flick through the BBC to see for yourself. I mean, it doesn't look fantastic for them if you dig down far enough, and you don't even have to dig down that far.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue.
That's a fantastic question. When you boil it down to its essence, he's just asked, Why do you update your information? Why is it that you've updated that information? Isn't it a funny question? Like, why change the information? Why go against what the narrative have been saying for the last couple of years? Well, it seems as though the narrative has changed a little bit. Things aren't what they were just 18 months ago, and as a result, we've updated the information accordingly. BBC's like, oh, fuck that. You can't be doing that. It makes it look like what you said the last couple of years might not have been true.
Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
What a fantastic response by the journalist. Look, this is not an interview about what we've done wrong. This is an interview about what you've done wrong. So if you could just understand that I'm the interviewer, you're the interviewer, you shut the fuck up and answer my questions. Anyway, I would love to hear what you guys made of this interview. I know it's been popular over the last week or so. Let us know, what were the main themes in there? What frustrated you? What excited you? What do you think about Elon? What do you think about the journalist? Let me know in the comments below. It's certainly nice to see a fresh voice at the very least, sharing some new ideas to what has been a very one-sided argument for quite some time.